they'll interrupt me to do a really horrendous impression of my accent.
So they do not just make remarks on your accent, they actually mimic right in front of you.
Yeah, and it's really horrendous as well. Most of them just think it's the northern accent. Like, no, I'm from Hull, so mine is a Hull accent. But even if you just stay in Yorkshire, going from Hull to Leeds to like Bradford, those accents change so much. And then there's like Manchester and Liverpool and Newcastle, and there's all these accents. So they'll interrupt me and do the weirdest northern accent you've ever heard, which is the most offensive actually, because it's like, where are you from? What nomad are you? They'll usually like start in Yorkshire with like, because of Sean Bean, and then they'll move over to Lancashire, and then they'll try and say something a bit scouse, and then they'll end up somewhere else. I'm like, and that was meant to be me, was it?
Hello, welcome to Comedy with an Accent podcast. I'm your Taiwanese comedian, Quan Wen. I interview comedians who perform English stand-up comedy but who are not native English speakers, or they can have a very distinct British regional accent. This podcast is all about comedy, about accent, about languages, and about the comedy technique. So stay tuned if you're interested. Good to go?
Good to go.
Yeah, if you can give me the 1, 2, 3, I'll start.
1, 2, 3, and go.
Hello, welcome back to Comedy with an Accent podcast. Today I have, how do I do it? This rundown. So I have recorded interviews with about 40, you are my 47th interviewee.
I'm your 47th.
47th. So there are 2 that I've interviewed yet to be released. Of the 47, I've only talked to 6 British comedians so far. Among those, you are only the 3rd ever English comedian on the podcast. And let's welcome Louise Atkinson.
And yet one of your top friends, and I'm 47th to be here.
I've always, all right, before we get into my defense, let me just go over a very brief summary. Louise Atkinson has been a finalist in the, do you want me to mention Amused?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Because people in the UK vaguely associated with comedy circuit might be familiar with it, but I don't know. People
But nobody cares, as my career is showing.
No, it's just with how it's named, people may take a Mickey out of you to mention. Not to mention, if we have listeners in Canada is where Kamito is called like a moose knuckle.
A moose knuckle. So maybe you're just commenting. This is my friend Louise who's got a great moose knuckle. Yeah.
So to mention, you've been a finalist of Amused's New Eye competition, and then your
taken her 47 episodes to get here. She had to get all the stuff out of her moose knuckle. What a lovely thing.
Your show, one of your shows, has been nominated as the best show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival by Amused.
Not to be this knobhead, it actually won. I won the award.
Oh.
And do you know that award lights up?
So you do want to mention Amused?
Only because it's an award that lights up. Like, it looks like you can get it from Tiger. In fact, it probably did come from Tiger.
But either way, she has brought 2 critically acclaimed shows to the world famous Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Yeah, we are both tired and jaded, but we're gonna finish the recording today. Louise Atkinson, shall we talk about you to start with? Or shall we talk about where you're from?
Whatever you want to do, darling. It's your show.
Oh, I am a little bit.
Living it.
Okay, let's start with the standard question. Please do not take offense, because outside this context, this question sounds very condescending, especially from someone who lives in London. Even though you also live in London,
yeah.
I know you feel by heart, through and through, you are from the north.
I am from the north.
Yes, so the question is, do you think you have an accent?
Yeah, I definitely have an accent, as most people.
I notice a gentle frown, but not so much.
Only because I was about to mention London people or Southern people who tell me how much of an accent I have. Usually when I'm trying to say or order something, and they go, "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Well, I think you can work it out, sweetheart, can you? Like, I've ordered a rum and coke. I haven't ordered, like, rum and brandy, have I? Like, I think you can work that word out for yourself, can't you?
I'm quite surprised you haven't mentioned a single in the mimicking, because I was listening to Louise's wonderful podcast, Be Very Afraid. I just thought, oh, the amount of beeps I have to insert into this hour is going to be massive. But I'm surprised when you're trying to vent your frustration and anger towards...
I think I did really well, actually, being really polite.
Do you not find it contradictory, because you are yourself a Londoner?
How dare you? Oh, absolutely dare you. I am someone who lives in London.
You live in London, you pay tax in the city, you use the city's infrastructure. You can keep your emotion. You can keep your emotional attachment to your hometown, but being a Londoner and being from the north is not mutually exclusive. Actually, lots of people who live in London are from the north,
and they feel as bad as I do. Like, I tell you this: use the infrastructure when it pissing works as well. State of it all.
Okay, so that sounds like a general encounter you have with people from day-to-day life. As a comedian, do you think you have an accent?
Yeah, to be honest, I've had comments on my accent more from comedians than I have in the outside world.
From comedians or from comedy punters?
The comedians.
Oh, in the green room?
Yeah.
Before and after your set?
Mm-hmm. So, like, I've had it where I used to work, obviously, in corporate world, and I would have it where I would be the most senior person in the room and I'd have people making inappropriate comments. But that's corporate world, and you can be like, you need to rein your neck in, Craig, because I'm in charge.
Bring
here.
the HR in.
Exactly.
Karen!
Exactly.
Karen!
Exactly. But I've had it from comedians because they think they're trying to be funny and usually failing. Like, in the middle of me saying a sentence, they'll interrupt me to do a really horrendous impression of my accent.
So they do not just make remarks on your accent, they actually mimic right in front of you.
Yeah, and it's really horrendous as well. Most of them just think it's the northern accent. Like, no, I'm from Hull, so mine is a Hull accent. But even if you just stay in Yorkshire, going from Hull to Leeds to like Bradford, those accents change so much. And then there's like Manchester and Liverpool and Newcastle, and there's all these accents. So they'll interrupt me and do the weirdest northern accent you've ever heard, which is the most offensive actually, because it's like, where are you from? What nomad are you? They'll usually like start in Yorkshire with like, because of Sean Bean, and then they'll move over to Lancashire, and then they'll try and say something a bit scouse, and then they'll end up somewhere else. I'm like, and that was meant to be me, was it? Or are you having a stroke? Like, what's going on?
I don't think I've ever done that to you, have I?
No, you've never done it to me.
Because I have enough self-awareness on my own accent. So it would be very hypocritical for me to do that.
Because, yeah, and then they just, essentially what they do is they make a load of references or comments about essentially stereotypes they think is classist, to be quite honest, of what they think a person from that area says. And I'm like, you do realise that's not me. And also you've interrupted me saying something really interesting for you to try and be funny, and your material isn't funny, so you making a quick whip probably isn't going to help you, sweetheart.
In your recollection, is it possible to highlight a specific demographic of people who do this in terms of region or social class or race or gender?
Yes, it's usually knobheads. Across the board. Across the board, knobheads.
Okay, so it could be people from anywhere.
No, it's mostly people who are middle class and usually southern, but mostly middle class, yeah.
So British,
yeah.
Okay.
I've had it because I used to have a job where I used to have to travel around a lot and live in different places, and I did have to try and do my phone voice there because I would
your receipt pronunciation.
Yeah, because I would be training people and they wouldn't have, like, I used to work in America and I used to have to go and train people on this particular software, and they didn't have a bloody clue what anything I was saying. So I had to try and speak a bit more, just sort of like, okay, yep, no, absolutely, that's great work.
Yeah.
And then we'd go out for drinks and I'd be like, hey up, love, like, that is absolutely daft, that. And they'd be like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong?
Okay, so there are two sides of the one side, emotional side. You were born and you were raised in Hull. This is how you speak.
Yep.
So emotionally, any request asking you to amend your accent or to change your accent can be offensive. But practically, you're saying when in the corporate world, you're dealing with people from America, they generally do not understand. So in that circumstances, you did try to neutralize your accent a little bit. Having said that, though, even though people can tell you're not from the south of England, I would think most British people would not have a problem understanding you.
They probably did. They're just so desperate to make a comment. Like, I think this is a particularly British thing, and it's just so rooted in class. They're just wanting, because the thing is if I had an insanely posh accent, like if I sounded like Boris Johnson, who most of the time you can't understand what he's saying. Yeah, he's talking about the thing, and then he's talking about coleslaw, and you just don't know what he's saying. Nobody would probably ever stop him mid-sentence. People would take the mic, but they'd never stop him mid-sentence and be like, oh my God, and then start impersonating his accent. Whereas if it's a regional one, first of all, they immediately presume you must be of a lower class, which isn't always true. And then they just immediately think they can just start talking at you and make you feel rubbish. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, no, you can't do that. So it's really, British people do it a lot with, I would say, Irish and Scottish people as well. I think they get a big brunt of it. And it's just not, it's rooted with British people, it's rooted in classism, is my opinion. But you're completely right. When I go abroad, because it's a different thing. Like, I've had people with really, to use Ireland as an example, I went to Cork and it was a beautiful accent, but I really struggled. A beautiful accent, but I have to be honest, it was every other word. I was struggling.
I used to think outside the UK, most people will only struggle with the strongest of accent you found on the British Isle, namely the Glaswegian or the Scouse Northern Irish. But then I show my friends, so I kind of had that inkling when I recommended Dairy Girls to my friends. Who live in continental Europe but who are Taiwanese or from other countries. I say you probably need a subtitle on. But it turns out it's just not Dairy Girls. It's something likely Irish, just generic Irish accent. They find that absolutely difficult to follow as well, though. I can't name an example, but normal people.
Yeah.
I think British people have no problem understanding Irish accent, but for people outside the UK, normal people can be difficult to understand. That it never occurred to me because I lived here for quite a while.
You're talking about the TV show Normal People, right? And you're not just saying normal people.
No,
like
a
a generic
TV show. Yeah, the one with the Paul Mescal's.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to stop you here because I want to explain. I noticed my audience from the UK has dropped from around 60 to 70% to below 30% right now. I just think that British people don't really enjoy learning about other accent, other language. I don't know, but percentage-wise, about 70% of listeners are around the world, with about less than 20% from the United States. So I'm going to be a little bit patronizing. We're talking about the North versus South divide in the UK. In my home country, it's the opposite. So the South...
East and West.
No, so the south of the UK is considered more prosperous and wrongly considered more sophisticated, more middle class. It's a power center. And the north used to be the industrial powerhouse of the country, but then suffered the decline, especially under Margaret Thatcher after the 1980s. So the north is considered the poorer part of the country. But I'm talking about the north of England because Scotland and Wales have their own character. But in general, Scotland, Wales, and north of England all suffer industrial decline. They are now seen as more lagging behind. And people then see people from the north as simpler, more blunt. It's just general impression. So what Louise encountered is the snobbery of middle-class people from the south, which is completely the other way around because in Taiwan, the capital, my city in the north, is the center of economic activities.
Okay.
So we have our misunderstanding between the northern and the southern, just the other way around geographically. And I guess in America, it might just be the coastal, so the big western and eastern coastal city versus the center. And I believe every country must have similar thing. In one country, you may have the big divide between two parts of the country.
So in Taiwan, is it as class-based as here?
A little bit less class-based because we don't have that long a history.
Yeah.
We don't really have that working class spirit. Most people whose parents were poor were peasants.
Oh,
So
nice.
we didn't have a long history of industrialization. So the notion of working class isn't quite strong.
Okay.
And I've talked about this with various guests. And I think working class doesn't just represent your income level. It represents a way of life. It's like, it can be seen a bit tribal as a foreigner when I look at it. But sometimes when I realize the snobbery you encounter from middle class people, I understand why the identity is so strong.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a very long... I don't know how I'm going to edit this, but just for people to understand. Just about 20 or maybe 30 years ago, the proper received pronunciation, what you understand as BBC English, is the only accent allowed to appear on radio and on TV. Louise accent wouldn't be there. And actually, I want to say Louise is from Hull. And that is the East Riding of Yorkshire.
Correct.
Yorkshire is a very big county. Someone described it as the Texas of England. Is that a good comparison?
I think that's amazing. Yeah, that's a great...
I want to name two famous people that listeners around the world would know. One is Sean Bean, which you probably would think makes more sense because Sean Bean does retain his Yorkshire accent whenever he acts in general, especially in Game of Thrones. I would even argue that the North in Game of Thrones is basically the idea of Yorkshire.
So you know that they asked him to change that accent and he said no. That's why it's that accent again.
I didn't.
So all the other actors had to learn how to do the accent. It's amazing. So he also played his sort of big breakout role, I think, is a character called Richard Sharp, which is based off Bernard Cornwell's books. Sharp was in a massive TV show sort of early 90s. It's brilliant. But originally the character of Sharp in the books was a Cockney guy from London.
Oh.
But Sean Bean went, yeah, I'm not doing that. So for the TV show, they changed his entire character and story so that he would just be
already have enough clout to...
Not really, no. He was just a really confident Yorkshireman.
So you wouldn't be surprised there's a much favored brand. So foreigners who come to the UK tend to buy teas from Twining or Whittered. But British people, especially the hardcore one, they like Yorkshire tea. For them, anything else is not strong enough. So you wouldn't be surprised Yorkshire tea when they do the commercial. Who was causing it? Sean Bean.
Exactly.
Let's do it for Yorkshire. So that's a very long introduction of the whole context of the snobbery of people from the South. What Louise say, which funnily, they associate less prosperous region with the lower social class automatically.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, because I think we do this a lot and we're like, oh, it's Southerners, but there are quite a lot of like working class people in proper London, and also Cornwall is kind of its own thing as well, which is technically in the south, but they're also like really. So it is mostly about class, and most of those affluent areas happen to be more in the south than there are some in the north. Like Yorkshire actually has some really affluent areas, like Harrogate and York. They're really quite...
Let's say when acts say that to you, when they mimic your accent in front of you in the green room, how did you react to them?
Well, they're in hospital now. No, I kind of do a bit of a Paddington Bear stare, you know, when you're like... I remember one act he did it and I was so pissed off. I just let him finish and I was just staring at him and I was like, right, are you finished? Can I finish what I want to say now? And then he sort of realised he'd done something wrong. But that actually made him double down and just keep going again and again. Like they just listen and they just feel that they have the complete freedom to comment. So yeah, I have no problem saying to people, who do you think you are, what you doing?
It's funny, isn't it? Like no one would dare to do my accent to me, at least in my face right
Correct.
now. But yours still consider...
Well, it's just different connotations, isn't it? Like, nobody really cares. Well, they should, but they don't really care about class and they can get away with it. Whereas yours would be completely entrenched in racism, probably.
You basically mentioned you're from Hull.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you mention it because it's so much part of your identity, you're proud of it, or it's because you think people will ask you, where's the accent from anyway? Can people tell, though? Can British people tell without you saying anything?
If I say something with letter O in it, they can, yeah.
They can.
Or, yeah, distinct. Because the classic from Hull, if you want to hear a Hull accent, is get somebody to say, oh, no, I need the phone. Like, it's a really... or, like, I need a glass of dry white wine. Like, so I like this.
So technically, you don't have to say people will know, but they like to hear you confirming it.
They like to get it's Hull. I get a lot of, after comedy gigs, I'll get quite a few people come up to me going, it is Hull, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it is, yeah. They can tell it's northern, they can tell it's Yorkshire, and then, but because Hull's so specific, they like, it is Hull, and I'm like, yeah, you've nailed it, well done.
I'm going to rephrase my question in a different way. I talked a lot of foreign acts, and in our ideal scenario, we hope, despite our accent, we never have to mention where we come from, because we can be more neutral or just do whatever comedy we want to do. But in your case, though, would you fancy the scenario where the audience are not interested in knowing where you're from, what your accent is? Or, because I feel you're so proud of where you come from. Does that make sense? Like, I'm very proud of being Taiwanese, but when I perform, I don't necessarily mention it all the time, want to mention it, just because as soon as I mention it, I'm immediately foreign.
Yeah, I suppose it's...
and put him in a much smaller box.
Yeah, I think it's more of a obstacle for you for that reason, because like you said, I think you do get put in a box because you've said it. But I suppose I have ease in that element because mine's a cultural... You know, it's...
You'll be Northern, but you're still British.
Yeah, basically. And it's... You get people making immediate connotation, because especially a lot of people, they think many things of Northerners or working class people. One they usually think are quite... is, they're really amenable and funny. They don't understand that I hate them and I'm not, but that's a different vibe.
Who do you hate?
Everybody, you know this.
Yes, so now that you mentioned this, I prepared...
a list of people I hate. How long is this podcast?
I prepare a theme song for you. So
oh my God, I love this already.
This is supposed to be your entry music today. Okay. But then I thought it has to make sense.
I hate people.
Okay, done.
I love that. I love it so much.
So you're saying that the stereotype of people from the north, they want to befriend everyone, they want to talk to everyone, but you just say, leave me alone. I don't want.
Yeah, but I do have northern syndrome because I will just talk to people. I can't help it. So I will be at the bus or I will be at the bar and I'll be like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "What am I doing? I don't want a conversation with this person. It's horrendous. Why am I doing this?" And then, because I have worked for decades on having resting bitch face. I've perfected it. And yet people somehow still think she's amenable. I'll ask her for directions or her about her life. And I'm like, I don't know what else I've got to do
Can
here.
I just say, you say you've worked on your resting bitch face forever. I was looking at the reviews on your 2 Edinburgh Fringe shows. You know what's the word that comes up the most often?
No, because I don't read them.
Affable.
How rude.
The effortlessly affable Louise Atkinson. Daughter of Hull, this is from Critics Central Review, a very affable presence on stage. I do have to say, though, we were talking about the division between North and South, middle class and working class, divide, sophisticated versus perceived simpler. I do have to say, there was one review. I know you don't want to read the review. But
No, this is like torture for me. This is horrible.
Okay, so it says, amidst a fringe never lacking in the plummy accents of the UK Deep South, it's a relief to hear your accent. And I thought, interesting. Where does this person come from? And I look up, it's from Quintessential Review. It's from William Queen, who is originally from Dundee and based in Edinburgh, Scotland. So he must feel kind of... like almost close to vomiting with all these acts from Cambridge, Oxford, London, middle classy, similar accents.
I mean, yeah, that's the Edinburgh Fringe for you. What are you gonna do?
Do you know, though, Timothée Chalamet mentioned that he found the whole accent to be the sexiest accent in the United Kingdom.
And he is correct.
I've been very careful because when I was coming up with the idea of this podcast, I was thinking how to avoid treating my acts as zoo animals. Because a way to do the podcast would be asking you, so now do this, now read this, and now read this for me, right? Because I just felt having you talk, people will understand. But the whole accent does stand out. 2 other famous comedians also from Hull, I would say, is Emmy Gladhill and Lucy Beaumont. They're both from Hull. And one sound, whenever I listen to you and listen to your podcast, one sound I would notice is the way you say, oh.
Yeah.
So the received pronunciation, I know I would never get 100% correct, but I'll try my best.
Yep.
So when you say a goat or like so, when I listen to Louise' podcast, you'll say sir.
Nice.
That's something I noticed a long time ago. It doesn't impede my understanding, but it gives me a distinct flair. I can instantly recognize that that's your accent. One thing I don't understand, though, because I was trying to find where the accent comes from, and they did say that the north of England, so the Anglo-Saxon come from the north. I hope this is not driving people away. Sounds way too linguistic. But the base of English is the North Anglo-Saxon from northern Germany, Denmark area. But then the north of England was ruled by Vikings for a while.
Yep.
And that's why York used to be Jorvik, the Viking settlement. So there's an influence of Old Norse, according to one source. However, I found on Hull Life, or the Hull
Oh, God.
they say that Hull has a distinct accent different from other areas in Yorkshire.
That is
because
true.
When the Vikings came, Hull wasn't there yet. And Hull has this distinct accent because it was one of the busiest ports on the eastern side of England, a trading port, lots of low country merchants that give it distinct flares. According to Hull Life, it comes from Dutch influences.
Right. Let's start with Hull Live, shall we? This is a supposed newspaper or website that once did like 2 days covering a woman who reversed into her own bins. Okay. So this is maybe
so I'm not comparing like to like level of quality information.
But yeah, so in the UK, vowels in particular are really quite illustrative of where you're from. It's quite easy to point out. So you have the letter A, for example. So I would say Bath. People from the south would usually say Bath, right? And it's thought, as you found, that that's mostly because the south was mostly invaded by the Romans, the north was mostly invaded by the Vikings. Both of them left, and then the Anglo-Saxons just sort of tottered around for a bit. I'm like, I guess we'll just stay up here then. So Hull was there, but it was called Wyke.
Oh.
And it was a docking city for York. Up until literally the Second World War, Hull was the biggest dock in Europe,
Yeah.
which is why it got so badly hit during both the wars.
It was the second most bombed city during the Blitz.
So we have a big trade route with the Netherlands, and a lot of the time in the Netherlands, the way they pronounce the letter O is quite similar to how Hull people pronounce it. So it's thought that potentially is like an influence.
But Lucy Beaumont also mentioned in the same article with Timothée Chalamet's praise. Lucy Beaumont said whenever she gigs in Norway, local population wouldn't find the vowel sound funny because for them, they have lost those sound in their Old Norse language as well. So I don't know which one to interpret. What I do find funny though, Timothée Chalamet mentioned this in the interview with Lat Bible.
That your sources that you keep quoting
I Googled.
for these and the actual valuable source I've got of Lad Bible.
No, I was completely neutral. It just let me. What I found fascinating is that the same reaction from Lucy Beaumont was interpreted very differently on two news outlets. One is The Guardian, one is BBC. That proved your point of the snobbery. I'm hoping I can show Louise what I read. So here, you see.
Yeah, I know this bit, yeah.
The actress who wrote the sitcom Hellraiser added, he looks a very lovely young man and he should stay away from the region or he will be savaged by middle-aged Hull women.
True.
TV star Lucy Beaumont from Hull says she was baffled as to why Chalamet would find it attractive. So the lines picked up by BBC News made it sound like she thinks the whole accent doesn't deserve it. This is from The Guardian, the same reaction, Lucy Beaumont on BBC Radio 5. This is what The Guardian chose to write. The comedian Lucy Beaumont says Chalamet had put the city on the linguistic map alongside its more fashionable European cousins. No one ever thought of it like that, but with the seal approval from the Hollywood actor, it's definitely up there. Whole, Italian and French, he started a revolution. And I just thought, how could the same thing being interpreted so differently? And the only way I can think of is the editor from the BBC, maybe a middle-class, snobbish, who sees Hull as the backwater.
I mean, everywhere sees Hull as the backwater. It's like, yeah, it's always the butt of everyone's jokes. And it's one of those things, like, people from Hull can joke about it, but nobody else can. That's the rules. And they do. And it's just, it's a real pain in the ass.
And I mentioned this just to back up what Louise was saying, that this is the attitude from a certain social class for a certain region in the UK, that they see Hull as the backwater. But it's a very nuanced thing because Hull was also chosen to become UK City of Culture in 2017. And the decision came in 2013. At that time, according to the newspaper, it raised some eyebrows, which is a very gentle way to say that some people take the piss out of it. Having said that, though, some from Hull themselves didn't think they can pull it off, or they were thinking, like, what is this about? Where Hull became a very successful story of a city of culture and encouraged other cities to apply for the status. Like, art event, people frequenting the event has increased significantly in Hull. It was seen as a success story that regenerated the city.
Yeah, so because it actually originally, like years before, Liverpool was a city of culture and it brought the, all the stuff about the Beatles and everything, and that really drove it. Liverpool as a complete city to attend, so that's why it kept getting more traction. Yeah, there was a lot of jokes about it, but I could make jokes about it, but the truth is the wonderful thing about the people of Hull is it's quite similar to Glasgow. I went to Glasgow and I thought it was quite a similar vibe, which weirdly is another working class docking history city. Yeah. We just like what we like, but we love all the arty stuff, but we're not pretentious. So you find a lot of people are just doing stuff because they like it. So yeah, they're going to the art gallery, but they're not like being really snobbish. And it's like, I just really like that. That's really nice. And it's pretty straightforward. There's quite a good music scene in Hull where a lot of people are like, you're going to get signed and you're going to go do this. Like, no, we just like doing it. We're just going to go.
People do not know David Bowie's band, the Spider from Mars, is also from Hull.
Wow, you have done your research.
I have. Actually, I really want to visit Hull. I haven't done so, but I was shocked though. I didn't know Hull was just Kingston upon Hull. I thought there are two cities.
Oh yeah. I'll take you. We can go. The local delicacy is called patty and chips. Right?
Is it not pikelet?
No, pikelet's a crumpet. That's just what we call it. The local delicacy in Hull is patty and chips, which is herbed mashed potato fried and served with chips. I also don't understand the logic.
You mentioned that it's a very northern thing to use a sense of humor to deal with situations.
Yeah.
And your self-deprecating humor, do you think that's quite connected to your identity as a northerner?
Well, I think that's quite British. So even like, if you have more people from more financially affluent backgrounds, if they're doing it well, they'll still be Ivor Graham does a lot of self-deprecating, and he went to like Eton and stuff like that. So I actually think that's quite a British thing. I think more of a northern thing is a much more assertive and aggressive kind of approach. So the self-deprecation is there, but at the same time I'll be like, oh, and also you're like, and you'll go for it, and it's more affronting.
So you drive up and down the country. Actually, when it comes to Devon and Cornwall, there's a long journey east and west. About you go everywhere.
Yeah.
You drive. Do you feel your northern identity or you as a comedian on stage change quite a lot in different part of the country? Who you are, how they perceive you as a person, as a performer?
I think that's a really interesting question. Perceive me as a performer.
So I would make an example. A Welsh comedian, Stefan Aline, he feels like there's a home gig and there's English gigs.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And Scotch coming from Glasgow also mentioned that they come down south, they have to change the accent just to appease. They feel like this kind of betrayal of their class to just appease a middle class overlord kind of thing.
Yeah, like so there's a bit of a rivalry between Yorkshire and Lancashire. Very historically rooted in the War of the Roses. Let's not kick that off. So if I gig in like Manchester or Lancashire, they will immediately know. What's interesting is they'll know I'm from Yorkshire and they'll go, oh, but then I go, it's Hull, and they go, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. Because there's such a working class orientation around Hull. Basically, people are like, do you know what? You've had it hard enough already. We'll leave you be. You're all right.
So is there be mostly with Leeds or Sheffield? People from Lancashire?
It's just sort of Yorkshire as a whole, really. Because being from Hull, we have a problem with Leeds, but this is a different problem.
I never understand the tribalism in this country. I don't know if it's fueled by football or whatever.
But the one thing I have noticed from doing all around the country is it highlights demographics more and more. Because I think if you want to perform in this country, you have to know all the elements of the country and how all these different people react to different types of comedy.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about me as a performer, but it does help me cater my material. So for example, in my club set, sometimes I will talk about how I love MasterChef.
Yes.
And they never really do meals in MasterChef that are British. Like you never get bangers and mash. You do get bangers and mash, but it's not a big thing. I thought that was pretty safe until I went to Northern Ireland, where mentioning the word British in any capacity is extremely dangerous and went down as well as a bag of cold sick. So I thought this really solid piece of material was going to be absolutely grand, blah, blah, blah. I had them all on board. And then I was like, yeah, and then they never do British cuisine on MasterChef. And the audience went silent. And it was like, just as it left my face, I was like, oh, and this is the night I will die. Like, this is awful. But I got them back on board. But it was so important that, you travel all around and you learn that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's my job to go and be entertaining to these people. So I have to know what they want. I think a lot of comedians get it, especially when it comes to accents. Like, I have to do this and I have to cater for that. And it's like, well, you do, but only for the audience. The amount of comedians are like, look, I'm amazing and you just need to listen to me the whole time. No. You're a clown and you're being paid to entertain. You aren't being paid because you're so profound.
They are
and some of them need to get in the bin. Some of them need to rein their neck in and have a word with themselves.
You, in private, vent your frustration to me quite often.
That was so diplomatically said.
Yes, because we still want to survive in the industry. Louise works a lot, gigs a lot in comedy clubs. Mm-hmm. And you think you thrive, you become a much better comedian in clubs.
I do,
you even mentioned, I don't want to risk endangering your comedy career, but you have a very distinct disdain on posh audience. So now I'm hoping the listener, given the contact we've discussed so far, it kind of makes sense to you. Is the lifelong frustration against middle-class Britain. But can you elaborate a bit more on that, on your comedy?
How I hate middle-class Britain?
But in the context of a comedy performer looking at the audience, because they are different audiences. Some people would say, oh, as a comedian, you should be able to entertain every single room. Sometimes you can. I personally, I don't think I can.
There's
a difference. There's a difference between you can, but you don't want to. But you are forced to because you need the money, or you are on the mixed bill lineup. You don't have a choice. Can you talk a bit more about this?
Well, I could sit here and tell you how much I hate middle-class posh people, but the truth is, it's my honest belief that the reason comedy is so wonderful, particularly stand-up comedy, is you can have an array of people in that room and you can say a joke, and on paper those people should never get on, but you see them laughing at the same joke. And I think that's truly wonderful.
Bringing people together.
It's not funny, but it is wonderful to see. Like I see, you know, there's someone from Guildford over here in a gilet and beige shoes, and there's someone sucking on her own foot over here. Do you know what I mean? And you've said the same. There's no way you'd ever see them getting on, but they're laughing at your joke, and I think it's wonderful. So I obviously have, like everybody, a preference for the demographic I would like. But the truth is my favourite audience, or the audience I'd want the most, is the ones that are just up for having a good night. And they can be from any background they want, because I just think it's wonderful when you look out and you just like, you two are now, you could have a conversation now because you've got something in common because you've laughed at my joke. And
it sounds so lovely. I still cannot remember one day after your Edinburgh show last year, you say, oh my God, I had a room of Waitrose housewife.
I mean, some days are harder than others. No, that was that bloke, and he came in and he brought a bag of Madeleines.
What are Madeleines?
They're a petite sponge pastry. And what was awful is they were all individually wrapped, and he didn't give a shit. Like, he was just there individually unwrapping Madeleines next to my air conditioning unit. He was there on his own. He wasn't without anyone else. And I was like, what? He was about in his late 60s. I'm like, what part of my show did you think this was a good idea? Because I got recommended in Waitrose magazine, the tomato edition, for anyone.
For non-British people, Waitrose is like Whole Food in America, if that makes sense to you.
And I just kept getting these super Waitrose audiences that don't laugh. And they were like, yes. And I was like, do you want to unclench your arse, love, and have a laugh? Like, oh, it did my head in. But the Madeleine guy, he was
You
the
were so
worst.
angry. You still not say a single though. That's amazing. And I think
I'm doing
my
that for
memory
you.
card's about to run out, but we captured that bit. That's all that matters. This is going to be my trailer and the promotional bit at the start. I'm going to turn off my camera.
You're welcome.
Mentioned that Yorkshire is a giant place, right? I was wondering, what's this snobbish terminology of the North and the West and the East Riding? And I thought, is it because people just used to go everywhere with a horse and much longer than the rest of the UK? Turns out, I look up, it's because riding is from an Old Norse word used to mean the third.
Yeah.
So it was the Northern third, the Western third, and Eastern third until Margaret Thatcher bloody created a Southern Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So there are now 4 divisions, North, West, East, and South in Yorkshire. Okay, I thought it was a funny fact.
It's an interesting fact, yeah. Do you know you can also, Whitby is in Yorkshire, which is where Dracula was written. And what you can do is you can go on a train from York all through the Yorkshire
I didn't
moors.
know about Dracula, but I do know Hull is where Robinson Crusoe is written in the fictional character, whether he's
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. You didn't know a lot about your city. Yeah.
And Amy Johnson was from Hull.
Who is him?
She was rude. She was the first. I think she was the first person, not the first woman. I think she was the first person to fly solo from the UK to Australia.
I feel I dumped too much research into Hull. I keep veering to Hull. I forgot to mention more about comedy.
That's fine. Hull's much more interesting than comedy.
The Kingdom of the North, what's the name in Game of Thrones? It's based on the idea of
King of the North.
King of the North, right. Downton Abbey is also loosely based on the idea of the North, is that right?
Yeah.
Even though it was filmed
In London.
not in London, like in Greater London.
The same thing.
This is such a horrible segue, but I think let's just cut to how do people find you on social media?
Well, thank you for that excellent segue. To ask
You
about
know
that.
I'm known for segues.
You can follow me on, are we calling it Twitter? Are we calling it X? What are we calling it? On that thing that used to be a blue bed, you can find me on there. And Instagram.
I
And
can't believe you say Twitter before Instagram.
I don't know why I did that, actually. I think it's because I was trying to work out how do I pronounce it.
So you want to have a bit more incels.
I love insults. That's my jam. So there, Instagram and Threads, I'm at _L Atkinson _. And then on Facebook and TikTok, I'm Louise Atkinson Comedy.
Okay, anything to plug?
My podcast is called Be Fairy Afraid with
You
me.
know the reason I didn't mention it, right? Because of our chat before. Yeah, you have inventory. You have backup episodes.
Yeah. I got background episodes. You okay? So I've got that, and then just my social media for when I do anything upcoming.
Yeah, Louise Atkinson, such a weird combination. Like,
Sorry?
no, I wanted to say that. that being described as affable, but you have, you say you hate people, right? You have such a bipolar swing between cynicism.
No, this isn't me. I'm very, very assertive about how much I hate people. People are the ones who think I'm affable. I have nothing to do with their stupid decision making.
Every day I wonder how I got so much luck to become her friend. Right, that's the end today. I'm going to thank my guest coming on the podcast. That's Louise Atkinson.
Thanks for having me.
I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.